Would you feel comfortable going into a classroom and teaching?
Would I feel comfortable? It's tough because I've not been in that situation.
What's your recommendation?
I'm not going to make a recommendation now except to say that these are things that we really do. I mean, literally every day, Dano. We look at that. We look at the data. We look at what's evolving about how many people are getting vaccinated.
Last spring, President Biden cited Andrew Cuomo as the gold standard for leadership during the pandemic. President Biden still consider Andrew Cuomo the gold standard when it comes to leadership on the pandemic?
Well, John, we work with Governor Cuomo just like we work with governors across the country. He's also chair of the NGA, so he plays an important role.
Mayday, Mayday, United 28.
Man, I look forward to a May Day, Alice. I am done with winter. I am done with February, as my wife likes to say.
It has an R there.
There are February kind of people, and it's always a good way to forecast somebody's personality type. February.
That's how you say the name of the month.
Right, I know. There's also, I like Tucker Carlson, and we watch the show, but there is something about somebody who says rather than rather. And Tucker says rather. That's the kind of guy.
Well, his name is Tucker Carlson, and he's famous for wearing bow ties. So I mean,
that's exactly. When you get a bow tie, except for Mr. Toast.
I think I say
for
rather
Archie,
also.
Except for our Mr. Toast, who is married to Toast, who's our friend.
Mm-hmm.
People
I
with
like
bow
Tucker,
ties are problematic. I went through a bow tie phase too.
I like Tucker, and I like his bow ties, and I like his rathers.
But you know what? It occurs to me, and if you don't know who Toast is she follows us on Twitter as well.
We follow her too.
Yeah, and you can just type in I don't know how you find her, but you can follow her, and she's very cool. But she's, you know what? Maybe we're gonna have to rethink this because she's she's got class. Mm-hmm. So, and she rides a horse. That's right, right?
Yeah.
So the horse riding set. Those are people with panache. So maybe she sees some. Maybe she. I'm gonna have to trust her filter on this stuff. But so yes, February, rather. Mm-hmm. Tucker says with his floppy, waspy hair and his accent. By the way, I have met Tucker just once, and I'm sure we've interviewed him, but in person just once on a remote broadcast. This is in 2006 in New Hampshire. Was it 2006? When was the re-election? It was 2000. No, re-election would have been 2004, 2008, I guess.
Okay.
I was helping out the Howie Carr show, and we had Tucker come on, and he was a absolute sweet guy, and no airs whatsoever. He was just a really nice guy. One of the effusively, immediately disarming nice guys, and no attitude, whatever. We had all sorts of equipment in the booth, etc. So he had to jump over the back of the booth to get in, which he did without even batting an eye. But at that point, he was really not in demand. I think he'd maybe already been on Dancing with the Stars, and
because the show didn't really start until around the time of the Trump election, right?
No, but he had worked for every other.
Well, people knew who he was, but he wasn't the
Tucker
king
Carlson
of cable TV news like he is now. I mean, he has, he goes back and forth with Hannity a little, but the best rated show on cable news. Overall,
have they recovered their ratings?
I don't know if Fox is totally back in the ratings, but I think. I don't know. I'll check on that and let you know.
So where are we? I gotta stop doing this. By the way, that Mayday call was from that United flight where the engine burned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where they were dropping bits of debris onto suburban neighborhoods. Yeah. And
my mother was a flight attendant and used to talk about they're losing engines all the time, and there'd be lightning strikes and this and that, and how even these big planes could essentially run on one engine, and it's interesting because these flight attendants, they take so many, they log so many hours, they take so many trips, etc. That actually speaking of Toast, we have a I don't want to out him, but a good another friend who's a pilot. So it's not a big deal really. Actually, I should have called him. Damn it, Alice, we should have called him about this. When something airplane-y happens again, we're gonna call him.
Okay.
Okay, I don't want to out him just in case he's trying to be employed again and can be associated with, somebody who still believes in free speech. That flight was going. Where was it going to? Was it in Denver? Was it going to Hawaii? What was it going to? This United flight was in the air, and the engine burst into flames, and all sorts of pieces of the engine fell over the country. And you do hear these guys just ice water in the veins, like from who was the Miracle on the Hudson guy? Sullenberger, who we talked to this captain. They just keep it together, and I love it. I love these guys, how damn cool they are.
28 Heavy, we experienced an engine failure. Need a turn. Mayday, United 28. United 328 Heavy, Mayday, aircraft.
328 Heavy, say again, please. Read all that again.
Yeah, United Denver departure, United 328 Heavy, Mayday, aircraft just experienced engine failure. Need a turn immediately.
328 Heavy, left or right turn?
Left turn.
328 Heavy, turn left heading 080.
Left heading 080, United 328 Heavy.
Mayday, United 328 Heavy. In Tom Shattuck language, when he's a pilot, would be, oh my God, the effing engine's on fire, Jesus, oh my God. Over the intercom, too. So that I would absolutely let the passengers know that we're screwed, But they just, very matter-of-factly say this stuff, and it's absolutely cool. I have a trivia question for you, Alice.
Okay.
If a pilot says over the intercom or on the wire, anybody who's a pilot right now is going to so take you, and you can get it. Where can they email us?
burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com.
Okay. What does it mean when the pilot says easy Victor?
Easy Victor?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
So think about...
is Victor the one for like when you do like Foxtrot Alpha?
Exactly.
That it's like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
So Victor means what?
V.
Right. And easy means?
E.
Right. So what does EV mean?
I don't know what EV means.
Evacuate.
Oh.
Exactly. They've got all sorts of cool codes. There used to be a hospital one that was calling patient zero. Did you know about that?
No.
Patient zero used to mean that there was a fatality.
Oh.
Somebody had died or was dying or whatever in the hospital. Jesus, this is, we've taken that
Speaking of...
unforeseen exit.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Tom, as he is wont to do on the weekends, was perusing Craigslist free stuff and saw some plates that somebody was giving away and went to go...
Some people go to Tiffany's, Shreve Crump and Low. Some people peruse Craigslist free stuff, which is how you know you've made it.
Very cute decorative plates that he was all excited. He went to go pick them up and
Hold on, before we go any further. I need to defend myself here because, Alice, there are the kind of people who say February, and there are the kind of people who are combing through Craigslist free stuff as well. So I need to get in front of this, Alice.
Mm-hmm.
I am looking for odd and weird stuff, which I like. So we have like a big stuffed elephant in the house, and not a big stuffed elephant. It's whatever. But I just like interesting things.
Yeah.
So, for instance, although this wasn't free, we've got a big Chicago sign. It looks like one of the Chicago theaters downstairs. And I like quirky stuff. It's interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I like it also for free because our disposable income is...
Okay. So anyway.
Right.
Okay.
And specifically, I've been looking for... My daughter had asked for a dresser yesterday. Mm-hmm. So, much like Ted Cruz... Mm-hmm. I'm using my daughter to explain why I had to go perusing for plateware and Craigslist free stuff. So there you go. Go ahead.
So he comes back home and hands me the bag of plates, which are wrapped in tissue paper inside a hospital patient belongings bag. So, needless to say, I was completely wigged out by this because this means that somebody passed away, and that's why we are getting free plates right now. And it made me very nervous.
Right. And I could be, just from my own parents being hospitalized, I saw this thing from a mile away. They actually said, okay, Tom, your stuff will be out front in a green bag. And as I was driving there, I thought, what kind of green bag will it be? I was interested. I thought, is this going to be an upper scale?
Like a green tote bag?
Yeah, this is interesting. And there were two parcels there. One was in a white bag, and then one was in the personal effects of the deceased person bag, which is where they put the stuff I got.
But I don't know if I can sleep in the same house as them.
I know. Well, and tell them even more. That's what's more off-putting.
What? Oh.
Yeah, these are like
Some
decorative
of the plates
bowls.
had crumbs on them.
Yes.
So I'm scared. If you have advice on how to handle exorcising evil spirits from dishware,
yes,
please.
Yes.
Send it along. Burn Barrel Bungus.
Rhoda Hedgecock had just finished her after eights from the very plate that when she went paws up.
I'm kind of horrified, and I don't know what to do with the plates now.
Did you ask people to exercise the plates?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the risk.
I'm afraid. So, yeah. I'm
and that's
a little uncomfortable.
When you're that's the circle of people that hang out in Craigslist free stuff, Alice, and it's a roll of the dice. And sometimes you get
you get something great, and sometimes you get inserted into somebody's family tragedy.
Right. And so now we have Ethel's DNA sitting down in our kitchen, which is excellent. And although one good thing I liked about it was one of the kids was there when we discovered this, and now he's afraid of that bowl, which may make it so that we can have a bowl of something without a kid coming in, taking and stealing it. Okay.
So that's our scary story of the week.
Okay, let's get to
Fox News ratings. The most recent ones from Thursday night, Tucker Carlson was at 3.061. Anderson Cooper at the same time was 1.951, and Hayes was 2.208. So Hannity's taken more of a hit. Hannity's 3.118, Cuomo is 2.053, and Maddow is 3.468. So Maddow's beating Hannity, but Carlson still reigns supreme, basically.
Well, and if you look at the popularity of Trump with the country, and the fact that still most Republicans think that Trump won the election, it does make sense. I mean, Newsmax and OAN swept in right when they took advantage of the opportunity because they're true believers over on those networks, and so that's what you got. But the competition is good, I believe. So Anthony Fauci was on 143 TV shows this weekend. You probably saw a few of them. I actually really, honest to God, watched Meet the Press. The Jake Tapper thing, whatever that is, State of the Union, and Fox News Sunday, and Fauci was on all three. And how
does he have time? Doesn't he have a $400,000 a year job that he has to do?
No, he's not really employed. He just goes to. He definitely is the kind of guy who has makeup with him, pancake makeup now, and whatever else he needs. So here he is. So once again, and now I'm sick of saying this. The man is an incompetent man, unless he's not. And I've heard from some good, including some conservatives, say, no, he's not incompetent whatsoever. What he says is evolving with the information. And if he's not incompetent, then we need to get rid of the whatever agency he works for and all of the experts in it. Because all they've done is disseminate incorrect information.
Right.
Sometimes purposefully. Is it purposefully or purposely?
Either, I think.
Okay. Either, I say. By the way.
Like you can do it purposely. Means on purpose, and purposefully means in a purposeful way.
Oh, okay.
With purpose, I would say.
Thank you. Okay, so this question from Chuck Todd to Anthony Fauci is really neither here nor there. I just simply wanted to see if Fauci would answer it. So here's a straightforward question. Alice, you have been, I believe, pregnant previously.
Yes, several times.
Several times.
4, yes.
Yes. And so you had to take prenatal vitamins and do prenatal stuff. And in fact, there are a lot of pregnant women around. Many women, many mothers have been pregnant. This country is wall to wall with either people who are pregnant or have been pregnant.
Or will be soon.
Right. So they are not an asterisk. These are people who matter. Okay. Chuck Todd asked Fauci a straight-on question about the vaccine and pregnant women.
I want to ask you about pregnant women because I've had a lot of viewers ask me to ask you about this because there's some confusion. We know Pfizer's studying it. I've talked to other experts who said, hey, pregnant women should get vaccinated. They shouldn't fear this vaccine. What say you?
Mm-hmm.
What say you? Should pregnant women take it? $417,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. Very
much credentialed,
mm-hmm.
wholly respected, Nobel Prize, Time Man of the Century. He just got another $100,000 or something, some prize for
Israel gave him a prize for something.
Yes. And we just have we have now, if you don't mind, a medical question. This one's not about how we can't do Thanksgiving and our mask wearing and how we're responsible for spikes. This is a question for a doctor.
The issue is that pregnant women, we have not been formally tested in a trial for safety and efficacy. That is being done now. We will get an answer for it. However, following the EUA from both Moderna and Pfizer, thousands of women have elected to get vaccinated despite the fact that they're pregnant. Many of them were actually healthcare providers who felt that the risk of COVID on their pregnancy was far greater than the risk of the vaccine giving a deleterious effect. And as a matter of fact, right now we don't see any red flag signals among those thousands of people who have gotten vaccinated while pregnant.
The answer to should pregnant women take the vaccine from the epidemiologist guy who does vaccines for a living, for pregnant women listening right now, what is the answer?
It hasn't been studied, but some people have, and there's no red flags.
Right. Can we get something a little bit? Is there somebody else we can ask?
I mean, I would say personally, I would get it, but.
Well, that's good. And you've been pregnant. There's something. That's more of an answer.
Because I feel like what he said, that
you work at a warehouse and do not make $417,000.
Right.
You make
so that's
marginally less.
That's my view. I agree with what he said. Some people feel I think that COVID is risky. There's an unknown with COVID and there's an unknown with the vaccine. But we know that the vaccine doesn't just kill people outright within a couple of weeks. So that's a plus. We don't know what the long-term effects of either are, the effects on pregnancy. But I know that I'm not going to suffocate on a ventilator from the vaccine.
Right, I understand.
So that's my view. I agree with that, but I agree that it's not a very concise answer that he gave.
What does that answer do? It does nothing. We don't know. We haven't really looked at it yet. Some other people are taking it though. Good luck. I mean, this is a question. Half of the anti-vaxxer movement is due to, this apocryphal study years ago that vaccinations were leading to autism in kids, right? Mm-hmm. So you'd think that this is something you might want to nip in the bud fairly quickly, especially with a pandemic where we're trying to get to herd immunity.
But all their messaging has just been a gift to anti-vaxxers. It's the worst. This stuff, for example, where they have been saying for months that they're not sure if it stops transmission, even though it would be really, really weird for a vaccine to keep you from getting sick and not to prevent at least some transmission.
Right. And we know that 6 months from now, he'll be saying that's something we felt we had to say just to make sure that people don't let down their guard.
Right, but it's turning out now there's been 2 big studies now that have shown that there's 90% efficacy against transmission. It prevents 90% of transmission to get the vaccine as well. So now can we go hug our grandparents? Well, I don't know. We still might have to see here. But yeah, they don't want us to think that it stops this stuff because they want to make sure people continue to wear masks. But they have no idea. I'm like, do they not talk to people that are vaccine hesitant? Because I do. And what I hear those people say is, well, Fauci said it doesn't even stop transmission, so what's the good in that? We're still going to have to all wear masks because we still can't go anywhere. We're still going to all have to get COVID tested all the time. So what's the point? Why would I even get the vaccine? It doesn't even keep you from getting it. It doesn't even keep you from giving it to your loved ones. Why would I get that vaccine? So maybe they should stop saying crazy stuff like that that's really unlikely to be true and just say like, we don't have an exact number on how effective it's going to be against transmission yet. But yeah, they should be saying, like, throw yourself an I got vaccinated party with all your vaccinated friends and have a great time. They should absolutely be playing it up because we know it's a really effective and really safe vaccine. And, are just... like, I've looked at it pretty thoroughly because, like a lot of people, I was nervous too, because it was developed so quickly. But, the numbers are really good and millions of people have gotten it now. And the numbers are still really good. I mean, like, they're showing the Israeli data is, like, incredible. It's like 93% effective against any symptoms and 100% effective against deaths. And they have the bad strains there. Their dominant strain right now is that B117 strain that's more infectious. So, I mean, that's incredible. And they've vaccinated millions and millions of people. Like, yes, some people will have allergic reactions, et cetera, et cetera. But overall, the vaccine is much, 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 much less risky than getting COVID.
Right.
The more I look at it, the more I go, like, yeah, of course I would get this vaccine. Like, the data looks incredible.
Right.
Frankly.
So there's actually a writer for the New York Times, of all papers, who tweeted something about this that I thought was astute. And it's exactly what we're talking about. So why so much skepticism, he tweets? Think about all the negative things you've heard about the vaccines. They aren't 100% effective. Vaccinated people may be contagious. The virus variants may make everything worse. And the last one is, don't change your behavior even if you get a shot. You're right. They're absolutely incredible because they won't freaking level with the American people, which is a terrible thing. It's terrible. It's counterproductive. God, but they're so goddamn arrogant. That's what I hate about this.
Yeah.
I hate about this is that they say to each other one thing and they say to us something else.
Yeah, and it's not as though they were saying, like, we think it's probably pretty effective against transmission, but we have to wait for the studies to 100% tell you so, because then people would take that information and make a decision and maybe not wear a mask, But they decided that they don't want, if you start to say people who are vaccinated don't have to wear a mask, then that erodes all mask enforcement everywhere, because all you have to say when somebody hassles you in a store is, oh, I got the vaccine, and then they'll have to leave you alone because you can't be infectious if you got the vaccine, right? So, so then really nobody has to wear a mask because anybody who doesn't want to wear a mask can just say they got the vaccine, and that's what they don't want to happen. So they're just, they're just saying, like, worst case scenario being like this so that they can continue enforcing mask mandates everywhere, even as more and more people get vaccinated. And even as everybody who's been paying attention to the data actually knew was going to happen, we are now on an absolute huge drop off the precipice of the number of cases and deaths that are occurring. It's like cut in half over the last month or so. Since the peak of like 4,000 deaths a day, we're now down around 2,000 deaths a day in the United States. And that's the natural cycle of the way these waves have come. I saw somebody comparing it to the 1918 flu pandemic.
Right.
And it's like the same curves on the same timeline. We had a curve in the spring that sort of happened more so in the summer in the southern states. And then we had a second wave that followed the same shape but bigger in the winter, which is exactly what happened in 1918.
That's the Thanksgiving wave. Are you suggesting the correlation's there for Thanksgiving?
No,
Christmas?
I'm suggesting the correlation is there for how diseases run their course in a population.
Right. So this Thanksgiving and Christmas stuff was just another way,
right,
to try to coerce people into behaving the way they want them to.
These things might make a little bit of a difference at the margins. I mean, maybe they do. Sure, do what you feel safe doing. Listen to the recommendations. Go for it. But there's no evidence whatsoever that these things at a social level have made any difference. Look at how locked down California has been compared to Florida, and they're at like the same number of per capita deaths. Why are they the same when Florida has banned outdoor dining and Florida has been essentially completely open with no mask mandates the whole time? Could it be that people decide how much guidance to follow and do the stuff that makes a difference for them in their lives, and then they go about their business and the disease just does what it's going to do? Maybe it does. I don't know, but we don't necessarily understand how this thing has spread, and it hasn't followed any of the things that people said it was going to do. Did people over November and December wear masks a lot less than they did in January? And all of a sudden they all started wearing masks in January, so the disease went down? Did that happen and I missed it? Because it seems to me that we were all wearing the same amount of masks pretty much the whole time. Like, it doesn't seem like that's what made the difference. So, but anyway, good news. It's going down for right now. If enough people get vaccinated, et cetera, you know, there's a possibility going into the spring that we won't have that third wave like we had of the 1918 flu that was, you know, not as bad as the second wave, like roughly the size of that first wave. And, you know, we might have a small third wave, but maybe with all this vaccination that's happening, we'll knock it out. I mean, for all that we hear about what a terrible job everything's doing on the vaccination, like it's not that terrible. We can't all be Israel. Israel is like blowing away the world with their vaccination plans. But you know, the United States is doing a pretty good job. Israel. They're vaccinating really, really well.
I know who they're vaccinating.
Israel is reporting that they vaccinated half of their population. And I'm going to guess it's the Jewish half.
That's a very funny SNL, you know, taking another shot at Israel.
Seems,
yes. But that is SNL saying something that I would say it seems a little bit...
libelous, could we say?
Well, I mean, by the filter of 2021 and 2020, if generalities are bigoted, that would be anti-Semitic.
Well, it's also, you know,
or certainly anti-Zionist, certainly.
It's also not true that, you know, anyone who's a resident of Israel is eligible for their vaccinations. There's been some back and forth about the West Bank, about people who don't technically live in Israel, who have not wanted to be under the Israeli government and have their own health care through the Palestinian Authority, and have wanted to have their own health care through the Palestinian Authority. And Israel said, we're not responsible to vaccinate those people because we're not in charge of their health care, and they're not technically in our country. And so there's been some debate about that. But after some back and forth, they've agreed to donate thousands, and in all, over the time that they, you know, over the amount of time that we're talking about, they've agreed to donate like millions of vaccines to them, even though they don't have to. And the Palestinian Authority has access to their own vaccines through COVAX, which is that like vaccine sharing program for poor countries that like the rich countries donate vaccines into and the poor countries get them, including, by the way, Canada, which decided to take advantage of the COVAX vaccines because they are not producing enough on their own because I don't know what's going on in Canada, but I don't know. I read a thing today that the United States is now vaccinating more people per day than Canada has vaccinated in total this whole time. So, not going that well north of the border, but, you know, it's going pretty well here. It's going fast, you know, with hiccups, obviously, and with differences in opinion on the vaccination schemes. Ron DeSantis is embroiled in this scandal in Florida because he's chosen to vaccinate elderly people first, which is a Republican constituency. So they feel he's rewarding his own voters by vaccinating rich people first.
Oh, yes,
because
I saw that.
I mean, he's not vaccinating rich people first intentionally, but he's vaccinating older people first, which has that impact. So, but that also has the impact of reducing deaths quite a lot. So, I don't know, debatable. Different strategies for different people, but it's going well. Massachusetts even has come around. We're no longer like 40th. We're in like the top 10 of states for vaccinations now. And Massachusetts is now opened up to people over 65 and people with 2 or more comorbidities. So, you know.
What are comorbidities, Sally asks?
They are things that together with coronavirus can cause death if you have both at once. So, like if you have heart disease or if you have cancer or these other things, then you're at risk of dying. You're at more risk of dying for COVID because you have comorbidities.
Go ahead, Alice.
So
I gotta do something for work here.
Anyway, that's most of my vaccine news. But yeah, I mean, on the other hand, Biden is taking like full credit for the vaccine. He even said in his town hall last week that they didn't even have a vaccine until he came into office. He's said a bunch of different times there was absolutely no plan to get the vaccines out there, even though, you know, Trump was vaccinating. We hit 1 million people a day on vaccines before Biden took office. So somehow, even with the non-existent plan that was there. We seem to be vaccinating quite a lot of people.
So this is Biden on that very subject, and we'll get back to Fauci after that. All right, T-Dog, where is this? Oh, here we go.
Chemists, biologists, pioneering technologies that less than a year ago were little more than theories and aspirations. And it takes a partnership, in our view, between the federal government and all the companies and universities contributing to the vaccine effort. Just over 4 weeks ago, America had no real plan to vaccinate most of the country. My predecessor, as my mother would say, God love him, failed to order enough vaccines, failed to mobilize the effort.
His mother, Antoinette Fauci?
To administer the shots, failed to set up vaccine centers. That changed the moment we took office. I directed Jeff Science, my COVID-19 response coordinator, to lead my administration's work with the vaccine manufacturers to buy more vaccines and to speed up delivery.
So, I mean, this is no one's buying this. If you're kind of a lightweight level enthusiast for Democrats or Biden fan, maybe you'll take this as truth or whatever. But it's just a rewrite of really what happened under the
Right. I mean, when Biden ordered more vaccines, he exercised clauses in contracts that Trump negotiated with the companies. So
right.
This isn't like, whatever. It's stupid.
No,
the whole thing is just dumb.
It is, but we were at dumb. Right
we
before,
were doing an okay job before,
me,
and we're getting better now. Like, I
had to. Jesus. Right before.
But yeah, I mean, we were doing a decent job vaccinating, and we're doing better now. And it's interesting. There are many parts of the world, including, I mean, the entire third world, but also places like Europe that are really struggling to do as well as we have been doing with the vaccines.
Yes.
So, take it or leave it, I guess.
All right, let's get to Anthony Fauci. If parents want to know the answers to some questions, can Fauci answer any questions?
What level of risk is an unvaccinated teacher taking right now by going into a reopened school?
Chuck, you cannot give a numerical figure to that. You can't say what is the risk.
Can't be answered.
Oh.
You figure we booked the right guy, right? I mean, can't answer it.
Well, and it's funny because they've predicated the whole teachers returning to school thing on layers of risk, right? Okay, well, being vaccinated is good, but washing hands is good, and masking is good, and distancing is good, and having these protocols is good, et cetera, and testing is good, and tracing is good, and if you have them all, then it's really good. So they're okay, so it'll never be zero risk, but how risky is it if we have everything else but just not the vaccine? And they're okay, I don't know. Can't answer that one. No.
It's almost as if we pay these guys to know.
Me a number. I mean, obviously, being in school is very similar to being in the community. So the risk of a teacher getting infected in the school.
This is taken right from the teachers' unions arguments right here.
Yeah.
It's community spread, so it's very similar. Although it wouldn't be, because if you're in a building in a school, you've got 26 adults and 114 kids. Those kids generally are not a risk.
You would think so.
Is very likely very much similar to what you would see in the community, but we don't know that yet. You see, you haven't.
The grocery store is not like what it is in the community, and they get greenlit.
Done those.
Of course, they don't have the representation that the teachers have.
Kind of prospective studies where you can quantitate and make a decision based on this number is here and that number is there, because the data get fuzzy when you try to compare what happens when you're not in the school versus when you are in the school.
This guy is a flim-flam man. That is all he is. This is horse bleep. This is absolute manicured, cultivated horse bleep.
Would you feel comfortable going into a classroom and teaching?
Now this
should
be easy. Because this is a question that is it subjective? This is an opinion question. Would you feel comfortable? That's all it is. There's no wrong answer in this one.
Would I feel comfortable? It's tough because I've not been in that situation. I could tell you I have a daughter who I adore who is actually doing just that right now as we speak in a city far from Washington, D.C. So, I mean, I understand.
So he can't provide answers on stuff that's dependent on situations he's not been in.
I know. He seemed to be okay telling us all what to do all year, including things he hasn't done. So.
He wasn't, carrying a crock pot into my Aunt Millie's house before, but he knew we couldn't do that. That absolutely he knew we couldn't do.
Right.
He knew that we couldn't, be near loved ones. He knew that we couldn't have a normal Christmas with a degree of normality. That absolutely knew, because he's seen my Christmas. He knows how that works. And no, that's a super spreader event.
But a teacher in a class, he's just not familiar with that situation. I can't even imagine that.
Can't visualize what that layout might be like. He's not the kind of guy who's ever spent any years in any school at all, and then no.
Too hard to know.
The concern that people have, and that's the reason why we say, Chuck, when you ask a question, a specific question, it's appropriate and it's understandable, but there are so many complicated issues. How the teachers feel, how the parents feel about the possibility.
What the teachers union wants us to say.
Of bringing infection back home. There are so many things there that you need to consider. The thing that we say, and Chuck, I've been saying this for months and months, even antedating the CDC guidelines.
Your grocery store doesn't have to consider these things.
No, there's nothing complicated about that.
Is that the default position is that we should try to do everything we can to get the children back to school safely for the children and safely for the teachers and other educational personnel. And the CDC guidelines try to delineate the steps where you can do just that. How do we get them back to school in a safe way, and giving a couple of the guidelines, more than a couple, several of the guidelines of how you can do that. And it's not an easy issue, Chuck. Anybody that says it's easy decision to make, they're not looking at the complexity of it.
Yeah, human beings are involved at the end of the day.
That's why we pay some people $400,000 to come up with the difficult answers to questions.
Right, and people are involved at the end of the day. It's more than people being involved, because people are involved in everything, and somehow we're not frozen with indecision about whether or not to open grocery stores. People need them to be open, so they're open. Then we're not frozen with indecision about whether or not gas stations should be open. They're just open. That's just how it is.
People are involved at the end of the day. And some of these people are calling from the American Federation of Teachers, and they tell us what to do. Walmart
has people involved. Walmart has complexity. And somehow people manage to make decisions to open buildings or not open buildings based on safety. It's so out of touch with what's happening everywhere else in the country that, and it's not the teachers themselves necessarily in a lot of cases. In a lot of cases, it's purely the union using this as a tool to get other things that they want. I mean, I forget. I think we did talk about this in the last show, but I read that article that was like, well, actually, the schools weren't really safe before COVID either.
Yes.
Like, oh, okay, great then. So this isn't about COVID at all. It's really not. It's so mind-boggling that, the science people can't even answer this question beyond the very anodyne, like, it's very important that we do everything we can to have the schools be open, because schools are great and we love children and it's very good for children to be in school. We all want that. And then, not do anything.
Right. So let's get back to vaccines. Dana Bash and CNN.
So there is some confusion about what that actually means for a person's lifestyle after they are vaccinated. I'll give you an example. My parents have already gotten their second dose. They're fully vaccinated. Does that mean it's okay for them to spend time with their grandchildren who obviously have not been vaccinated? What's your recommendation?
I'm not going to make a recommendation now except to say that these are things...
Not a big answer day for Fauci today.
...that we really do. I mean, literally every day, Dano, we look at that, we look at the data, we look at what's evolving about how many people are getting vaccinated, and there will be recommendations coming out. I don't want to be making a recommendation now on public TV. We want to sit down with the team, take a look at that, and you will be seeing...
No, he's not made any recommendations on public TV.
But I'm going to ask you, do you think part of the reason he now refuses to answer questions is that he's switched his position on every single issue multiple times during this pandemic? So now he's just thinking I've gotten so much flack for changing my mind about everything or lying about things that, you know what, I'll just now not give any answers at all.
This guy has made 160 million recommendations over the last year. All of these recommendations, he is happy to just ruminate right in front of you. about what he thinks should happen. I don't see a typical Christmas happening. I could see one person in one room maybe, and we can have this. You could do this and that. He is Mr. Recommendation. That is what he does. No, now all he does is just snowblow for 5 minutes on each show. Now, and he knows that that's what his main role is in this administration as well. Mm-hmm. His main role in this administration is to not provide any answers, but say lots of words and hope that the American people listen to him and think that they don't understand it because they're dumb, not because he's full of it. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
Why are they so scared that people will go back to normal?
Because this administration has no reason to be other than to not beat Trump. Mm-hmm. And if they do anything that's at all resembling Trump,
like loosening any restrictions ever.
Right. Like nothing that's Trumpy can happen. And that's why everything has to be the polar opposite of Trump. That's why we're begging on bended knee for the Iranians to engage us in discussions so that we can give them nuclear technology. These people who are attacking American soldiers in Iraq right now. Mm-hmm. All because Trump was on the other side of it. We're trying to give amnesty to people along the border. And
I'm actually blown away, by the way, by how just eager Biden has been to send American troops back to the Middle East after Trump had withdrawn them. It's just bizarre to me. I mean, like, that's like one of the most popular things Trump did was pull American troops out of places where they don't have to be.
They're just trying to retreat to January 19th, 2017. Mm-hmm. When the world made sense and there was order and no chaos, even though
there was Syrian refugees everywhere and
that's exactly right. Yeah, that's the truth of it. Of course, there was complete chaos.
We were droning people left and right. Yes. ISIS was running amok, beheading journalists, and like
no doubt about that. But also, I don't have the cuts, but I also listened to Chris Wallace today talk to Fauci. Mm-hmm. And he said, it's interesting because Jen Psaki said something in the press room about vaccinations and returning to school, and President Biden stepped on her message and totally said that was incorrect messaging. Mm-hmm. So he is now stepping on his own press office's message, carefully sculpted messaging.
Yeah.
Which was the hallmark of the Trump administration. Mm-hmm.
Was that they would send people out there to defend him, and they would defend him, and then he would immediately stab them in the back by saying something totally different on Twitter, usually.
Right. But this is Trumpton.
Relaxation of some of the stringencies as more and more people get vaccinated.
Well,
I promise you that, but I don't want to really do it right now.
Well,
then why are you here? Why are you on the television? Because we're recording right now. We're looking for the information right now. No, I don't want to speculate on national TV. Well, this is a speculating on national TV segment that you're invited to. Mm-hmm.
We've had you on. You may be unfamiliar with this concept, but we invite you on and we ask you questions and then you answer them.
Right. What does he want to talk about? Can he? Is this going to be like Walensky? Is only his personal capacity?
Maybe he wants more questions about what his favorite food he misses from New York is and stuff like that. He's good at.
Yes, when the Italian guy from Brooklyn answers Nathan's hot dogs from Coney Island, which tells you how long he's been in Washington, D.C., that the New Yorker has just gone out of this
Make
guy.
it personal. I mean, you've been very open about the fact that you've been skipping holidays with your family. You're fully vaccinated. Are you seeing your family?
Right now, not yet. Not yet. I mean, I would look forward to it within a reasonable period of time as the rest of my family gets vaccinated. I mean, obviously, I'm with my wife every day.
Right.
She has gotten her first dose, will soon get her second dose. But my children, when they get vaccinated, obviously, I look forward to seeing them. And I'm sure that by that time, recommendations will come out to guide us in a more precise way.
Oh, man, I can imagine spending Thanksgiving with this guy when he's the patriarch of the family. And he's, the stem winders he must tell at the end of the table, and just huge stories about nothing. On another aspect of the fight with this COVID is the narrative of Andrew Cuomo being a hero is collapsing, as you say, Alice. Mm-hmm. Say it.
Collapsing.
It's collapsing. It's three syllables.
What's wrong with saying collapsing?
Because you make it 2 syllables. You rob it of a syllable where you are happy to charitably give February the R audibly. Collapsing does not get the same treatment.
Collapsing,
correct. So, yes. So, Andrew Cuomo's his legend is looming large, no more. And so Jonathan Karl asks Jen Psaki. You know about Jen Psaki, by the way. I think we all do.
Our government's now full of folks who are extraordinary, but I'm especially impressed by the new press secretary. She's gained a reputation for her brain in every session, as well as for the way she likes to use one pet expression. Circle back, Jen Psaki, circle back. That's your way of saying to the media pack, if a fact's in doubt, you'll go find things out and give more details when you circle back. You're no hack, Jen Psaki.
No, she's no hack. You're going to hear her not being a hack right here. When Jonathan Karl asks Jen Psaki if they still think that Cuomo is King Ding-a-ling.
Okay, I want to turn to another controversy that raged this week. Andrew Cuomo under fire for allegedly not being transparent and misleading on the number of nursing home deaths in New York. Last spring, President Biden cited Andrew Cuomo as the gold standard for leadership during the pandemic. Take a listen.
Your governor of New York's done one hell of a job. I think he's sort of the gold standard.
So now we've seen that Governor Cuomo has allegedly undercounted nursing home deaths, misled legislators in New York, and he called a New York Assemblyman Ron Kim, raising questions, basically threatening to destroy him, I think was his actual words. So does President Biden still consider Andrew Cuomo the gold standard when it comes to leadership on the pandemic?
Okay, no, hold on. It's a nice yes or no question. So I know that she's no hack. Mm-hmm. Lauren Meyer, who sings that song, tells us she's no hack. Also, I don't want us to be tone deaf here. Mm-hmm. Ron Kim is an Asian man. Mm-hmm. I believe there is a spate of crimes against Asians which are making the news constantly.
Right.
So Andrew Cuomo threatening to destroy him, to me, sounds like something that we should be concerned about.
Right. I think that I have heard that toxic rhetoric directed towards Asian Americans has contributed to the spike in hate crimes against Asian Americans in California and
by
New York
white supremacists, which Andrew Cuomo is white, I believe. Okay, so let's listen. Is he still the gold standard?
Well, John, we work with Governor Cuomo just like we work with governors across the country. He's also chair of the NGA, so he plays an important role in ensuring that we're coordinating closely and getting assistance out to people of his state and to states across the country. And we'll continue to do that. And there, of course, will be a process. The investigations will leave that to others to determine, the appropriate law enforcement authorities to determine how that path is going.
She's no hack.
Yeah, that was the perfect answer to the question. Is Andrew Cuomo an important political figure in America today?
To move as we look forward, but we are going to continue to work with a range of governors, including, of course, Governor Cuomo, because we think the people of New York, the people of states across the country need assistance, not just to get through the pandemic, but to get through this difficult economic time. And that's where our focus remains.
No hack.
All right, but Jen, my question was, does President Biden still believe that Andrew Cuomo is the gold standard, represents the gold standard on leadership during this pandemic? Just a yes or no. Does he
well,
still
John,
consider
the president. Well, it doesn't always have to be a yes or no answer, John.
So she just repeated what she said, every word for word for that. So she's no hack. That is Jen Psaki.
She's perfect. Also, I caught one thing she said there, which is that the Biden administration is committed to providing assistance to people all across the country, but I can think of at least one state that's had some trouble getting some assistance from the Biden administration lately.
That is there's no story there. There's no story about the inaction over Texas. The fact that Biden has not been there yet, he may go there. But there is no beat.
There, I mean, I get it that he can't personally turn people's power on, but the fact that, Texas declared a disaster on like the 14th, and requested one from the Biden administration, and they didn't declare it until the 18th, and then they sent 60 generators for the whole state is unbelievable to me. That is crazy.
Alice, you're not paying attention. There's only one story in Texas. The only one man who could have stopped the freezing of all the equipment and could have restored hot water and heat to everybody was Ted Cruz. And he was in Cancun, Alice, and he has been brought to bear for that, and he will never be forgiven.
Our girl's ass said, look, school's been canceled for the week. Can we take a trip and go somewhere warm? And Heidi and I, as parents, we said, okay, sure. And so last night I flew down with them to the beach, and then I flew back this afternoon. I had initially planned to stay through the weekend and to work remotely there. But
Heidi and I as parents, but one of the parents is a senator.
Yeah, she was also texting all their friends, asking them to come stay with them at the Ritz-Carlton in Cancun.
Right,
so.
Which also brings us to another situation here, is that's text messages between a civilian and her friends, which the New York Times is happy to publish. I know they can't. It's too good to be true. They can't leave their hands off it.
Right.
But as I was heading down there, I started to have second thoughts almost immediately because the crisis.
Because he checked his
Because
Twitter
everyone
feed.
was pointing at you as you boarded the plane and taking pictures of you in the airport leaving.
That'll bring second thoughts in. It was a dumbass move.
It was really dumb politically. It's completely out of touch and a terrible look. It's not. I mean, of course, it's not really. He could have probably done the same things remotely that he could do there, but it would have probably been better for him to stick around and see what he could do, if he could be making some phone calls to the Biden administration trying to get them to do something. The problem is, I think Ted Cruz genuinely lacks social skills to see that was going to be a problem for people until he was on the plane.
It's tough to explain away, though. I don't. Social skills. This is just political street smarts.
Yeah.
You would just you know what to do. You go fill up sandbags and freaking whatever, hand out jugs of water.
Yeah.
You can even throw paper towels if you must.
But even the apology, this that you just played where he's like, well, our house is really cold and our daughters wanted to go someplace warm. That just how does he not see that that's not the right thing to say? It's just he's just so bad at this. It's really
terrible.
awful. Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's.
And you know what's also not a small deal? Leaving Mr. Snowflake home.
Oh, the dog?
Yeah.
The people were there. His security people and stuff were
I know,
there.
but
the
you
dog was not alone.
that is, dog people have one religion, and that is dogs. Mm-hmm. You can't do that. Take Snowflake and throw him in somewhere where it's got heat, or bring him to Cancun. God.
I mean, it's a fair hit on Ted Cruz. The whole thing is a fair hit on Ted Cruz.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Not,
and is the thing about my daughters are there? Man.
Don't throw your kids under the bus either. It's really just the whole thing, and the fact that it was the Ritz, and
it's only $300 a night.
It just seems also did he quarantine when he got back? Isn't he supposed to? Who knows? I don't know.
He's already had it, I think, hasn't he?
Oh, has he? Is he one of the ones that had it? But
Fauci
he's probably been vaccinated actually from
you think?
being in the government.
Right.
Here in Texas, you need to be here on the ground, and as much as you can do by phone and Zoom, it's not the same as being here.
Here's another apology.
So the question from the video on the cell phone was whether the decision to go was tone deaf. Look, it was obviously a mistake, and in hindsight, I wouldn't have done it.
But that's it's a tough political hit because he's a guy who plays a part of a tough guy.
Mm-hmm.
He is happy to give both barrels to his political opposition, and so they are happy to bury him on this one.
I mean, even his allies in Washington don't really like him.
Nobody likes Ted Cruz.
Which is sad.
I'm fine with him. I do like his wife a lot.
Fault.
She's very impressive. But you know what? When you're the progeny, Alice, of somebody who is responsible for the death of a president, then the apple can't fall too far from the tree, I think. And as we know, Ted Cruz's father gunned down JFK.
I feel bad for Ted Cruz, and I read an interesting thread because some people some Lincoln Project person was dunking on Ted Cruz for being annoying in the Bush campaign and saying how no one liked him when Bush won back in like 2000. And, you know, and somebody kind of went back to the Lincoln Project person and said, like, well, you have this guy who's clearly really talented. Why didn't somebody mentor him? Why didn't somebody say, like, you're rubbing people the wrong way, you've got the wrong attitude, and you need to, like, shape up and be more like this XYZ? And, like, it's sort of, when you think about it in that way, it's like a sad story, because he's clearly, like, a brilliant guy, just from his education credentials, and he worked at SCOTUS and all that. Like, that's...
I'm told he's a brilliant guy.
He really is a brilliant guy on paper, and like he should be better than he is, and I don't know why he is the way he is, but and I think this is probably politically fatal for like presidential aspirations.
It's such a good scalp too for the left, because this guy's going to be, you know, if not the front runner in 2024.
Did you see Christie dissing him for it?
Was he really?
Like, Christie, there's photos of you on the beach that was shut down by the state. I would maybe tone it down a little bit.
That's great. Oh man. All right. Before we move to, well, actually, almost everything we're doing is New York centric today. This is audio of a protest in New York City. This is a protest for the lives of Asian Americans who are under threat by white supremacists. So, you know, whose streets are streets, whose streets are streets. And this, all over the place, there are these protests and this messaging about Asians being targeted by white supremacists. What I'm assuming this is, Alice, is these are Trump supporters who have roughly the same physical build that I have. These are white people who don't like people who are not white anyway, are uncomfortable with them, and who are mad about the pandemic and are mad about the coronavirus, which they consider the Wu flu or whatever they call it. And so they're beating Asians in the streets because they're just brute oafs.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that hasn't totally been the narrative. I mean, there is like one guy that's clearly white in New York that got in some fight with an Asian American woman, but the police haven't called it a hate crime yet, so it's not clear what happened there. But that guy was white, but the vast majority of these appear to be African Americans attacking Asian Americans, especially the ones in Oakland, California. Maybe they've absorbed white supremacist rhetoric. But I'm not sure how it's exactly white supremacy. But in particular, the one elderly Asian American gentleman in California who was killed, that guy who's been arrested is a black guy, and who ran across the street and just like body slammed him to the ground, basically. Just crazy. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I mean, some of these neighborhoods are like hiring private security now to try and get things under control. Time magazine wants us to know that more policing is not the answer to this problem, which I think if it were really white supremacists, wouldn't they want more policing?
I would think so.
Like if
there was
the
just
Proud
white
Boys
attack at the Capitol, yes.
If the Proud Boys were attacking ethnic minorities in their communities, wouldn't they want the police on that? But apparently not. More policing isn't the answer, and I believe that's because of the ethnic makeup of most of these so-called white supremacists that are attacking Asian Americans. So it's an odd situation.
So how are we going to attack the problem if these are
mostly... Well, we'll march against white supremacy, and like people in Congress, like, so there's this group in Congress, I forget what it's called. It's like for Hispanic and Black and Asian lawmakers to like all work together, sort of, to like bring their three communities together, and they're calling for like solidarity between the Black community and the Asian American community, and trying to remind them that like it's intersectional and it all is part of white supremacy, and we all have to like be together and stand in solidarity against the white supremacy that's attacking the Asian Americans. I also noticed that maybe this is like new lingo, or maybe people have always said this and I just didn't notice. But in a lot of cases, people are saying they're like attacks on Asian American elders.
Oh, yeah?
Have you heard that word used that way before?
I guess I have.
I've heard of like elder abuse, but it seemed like I would say like an elderly person or something. I wouldn't necessarily say elder in that context. I was wondering if it was maybe a new woke thing that we call like older people in communities of color elders, because it's like more in touch with whatever. You can talk about the elders. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So like that there's been attacks on our elders. That's the sort of stuff that I've heard. So I wasn't sure if that was like a new thing. It seemed new to me anyway.
Okay, I have one last thing to get to
Okay.
from me, Alice. This is a little complicated.
Okay.
But, okay. So I was listening to the Blocked and Reported podcast today. It's a great podcast. So they were talking about another podcast called Reply All. Have you heard of Reply All?
Yes, I've heard of Reply All.
So the Reply All podcast, and I'm trying to get to it right now, is the Reply All podcast is, where is it? It starts, hold on. Hold on. It is a podcast that started by a website called Gimlet.
Okay.
And Gimlet is a bunch of progressives in New York City. You know, total Brooklyn hipster types, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Columbia School of Journalism, and you come out and you work at some place like this, Gimlet. It's got a lot of money. They have this podcast called Reply All, and it is hosted by PJ Vogt and Shruti Pinamaneni.
Okay.
So these two people host this podcast, and Shruti, they went
probably
did this,
like Shruti.
Is it Shruti? Okay, Shruti did this.
I've known people with the name that's pronounced that way.
So it's Shruti.
Probably.
Shruti, they were doing a couple of podcasts and journalism, reporting on, looking back on the Bon Appetit situation. Bon Appetit magazine 10 years ago made a change. They became Bon Appetit Woke magazine about 10 years ago. They hired Adam Rappaport as the senior editor and said, hey, make this Bon Appetit Woke magazine. So Bon Appetit decided to go the woke route. Last year, a picture of Adam Rappaport was found in which he's wearing, they call it like Puerto Rican face, brown face or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. He did something.
If it's not a black person, it's brown face. Yeah.
So he's a baddie. He's got to go. So he's got to go. He's canceled immediately. Then they talked to people at Bon Appetit magazine who had worked there for a long, mostly they talked to temps, people like interns essentially, who were on freelancers, to whatever. But only people of color. That's what Reply All the podcast does. It's a very woke podcast. And they find some harrowing stories of how horrible Bon Appetit magazine was. It actually sounds like The Devil Wears Prada a little bit.
Okay.
And they have complaints like the editors wouldn't have lunch with them and talk to them, and the senior editor, hired people he thought was cool, and they weren't good to us, etc. So here's a little bit of the Reply All podcast. This is Shruti. Is it Shruti?
I mean,
okay.
I've known people with that name that's pronounced that way, but I don't know how she pronounces her name. So
she's talking about Bon Appetit podcast.
Okay.
And how awful things were. First of all, a couple things you got to know. Listen to her voice, how freaking millennial and younger she is. Her delivery and some of the things that the delivery and the imagery of her language. And if you're somebody who finds your soul torched by a vocal burn, then this is your warning right now to take your headphones off.
It feels wrong. Like I'm telling people that I, as a brown woman, have experienced a racism that is as constant and as oppressive as, say, a black person, which of course I have not. It was an ugly snapshot of an ugly place.
That's the snapshot of Adam in brown face. Now she's discovered that Bon Appetit was rife with racism and the white privilege. And
As I saw that snapshot, I've spent months talking to all the people of color who worked there, like almost all of them. It'll start a decade ago when the man in charge would build this whole place with a fundamental flaw. A flaw whose magnitude wouldn't be obvious to anyone, least of all the excited employees of color coming to work there.
It was just like such a spectacle, very formal, where like Brad put down like silverware and like different plates.
So one editor.
So what would happen is every day they would use their test kitchen and try different people would cook.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these young people wanted to cook. The temps, interns, and freelancers.
Mm-hmm.
I want to cook for Brad and all the editors. I want to cook. But they weren't being picked to cook, even though they were very special people. So they weren't being picked to cook, and they didn't like the idea that you had a white guy cooking Asian meal one day. What the hell was that? That made them upset. And then there was another guy who was a Hispanic guy who they asked to cook a Hispanic dish because he was Hispanic, and he was offended. So one person was offended that they weren't asked to cook based on their race, and one other person was offended that he was asked to cook on his race and nationality. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of offended.
So who's allowed to make dishes from other cultures?
Only indigenous. I don't know who is.
What can
there's a lot of
what can
offended
an American make? Only hot
Bon
dogs?
Appetit made the decision in 2010 to become woke, and so they hired woke, and they hired temporary woke. And so the woke are offended at every single turn.
Known for her refined palate, would periodically just spit out the food that offended her.
This is one of the people, the editors, who would have something disgusting to eat and would spit it out. Known for her refined palate. Can you imagine that? Oh my God. There are big foodies at Bon Appetit. But they found it damaging to them to see, oh my, that is such a rejection of everything we've done. I'm shocked that Bon Appetit magazine, located in the Freedom Tower in New York City, elite liberal capital of the world, had a-holes working there.
I know.
You know, the editors will come down and like hang out in the kitchen, but never really speak to you if you were a freelancer. It was a kind of environment where you just go in, do your work, put your head down, and leave.
Yes, because the
That's
editors
called a
are in
job.
upper management and have big things to talk and worry about. And they're not going to speak to some rent-a-hack who hasn't proven their bones. It hasn't made their bones yet. What are they going to talk? What do you want? You're sad that he's not talking to you? Well, then do something that gets them talking to you. Oh, they didn't speak to us, the editors. They wouldn't speak to the freelancers. What the hell's speaking to freelancers? Nobody's speaking to them. The editors are doing editor things.
They were almost always alone in a sea of white. Yewande, the only black person, Sue, often the only Asian one. Most of the Mexican...
A sea of white. My goodness, can you imagine?
Recipes that they ran in the magazine were, in his words, idiotic. They were almost all created by white people.
So these are the kind of people you bring in there, and they're all hurt. Yewande graduated from Stanford University, which is, I believe, an Ivy League university in California.
Mm-hmm.
And her mother went to Stanford, and I believe her grandmother may have even gone to Stanford. Yewande came from a upscale private high school as well. I believe Yewande is probably a person of some privilege. But this is her take about her time there at the magazine.
And I was like, well, I'm not depressed, actually. I just have a hard time walking around the World Trade Center and seeing people who look like me underrepresented in your offices, but overrepresented as your building staff, like cleaning, cooking for you, like all of these things. And it's like, those are my friends. Those are a lot of my friends at the World Trade Center. And that was really getting to me. And that was only 2018, and I had just started there. I was like, the Freedom Tower, my ass. This place is oppressive as
How many janitors would you say Yewande is friends with?
She's not friends with any janitors or any of the cleaning staff. No. But she came out of Stanford, an ideologue with a huge self-esteem and ego, and saw the oppression there. I can't believe it. It's a sea of white oppression. Those are probably, first of all, fantastic jobs to have. Any of the jobs. I'm sure they're probably union jobs as well. But to have a gig,
they're probably better than freelance or intern jobs at a major magazine. If the Bon Appetit magazine industry is anything like the fashion industry, then they're notorious for essentially not paying people at all. I mean, I worked at one time in my life at a fashion company, and I had an actual job where I got paid, but we had interns that did not get paid. And I talked to one girl who was like an assistant there. She did actually have a paying job, and she talked about she worked in New York at one point as an intern, and that, you know, you have to have enough wealth to have your parents pay for you to have a place to live in New York so that you can have the privilege of showing up every day and getting treated like dirt at a fashion company just so that you can like get your toe in the industry. And people do it. They claw and kill each other to get these stupid gigs that don't pay any money and where they're treated terribly. It's like the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. But I would say that probably being on the cleaning staff of the building, you might make more than some of the people who are working in the offices at Bon Appetit.
Well, and also, she complained about, and thank you to the Blocked and Reported podcast for bringing this to my attention. She complained about having to clean up a conference room, etc.
Mm-hmm.
When you're the new kid, that's what you do.
Yeah.
You clean up the conference room. You don't get to cook for the editors. They don't want to talk to you. You have to make yourself valuable.
I'm reminded of the Noodles kid. Do you remember the
Right, of
Noodles
course.
kid from the Michael Graham show who worked at the noodle restaurant and wanted the owner to sit down with them so that they could run it with him?
Right. It is not a pitch to explain to somebody how special you are. That doesn't do anything. These editors have to put out a magazine. And whether it's any job, especially a job in media, let me tell you, in the media, they just want people who can make content and be good soldiers. They don't give a frig. That's it. So if this person had just cleaned the room like nobody else and found ways to make the manager, the editors' lives a little bit easier, the editors would have said hello. But no, they're too self-important, too busy looking for chits for being victims about this or that or this or that or this or that, looking for racism, sexism, and all these other isms somewhere. Too self-important doing that stuff than to just put the friggin' work in, shut up, and get through it. And now they're complaining and saying, wow, it's all because from the top, because this woke guy, wasn't that the snapshot was just a sign of his other white supremacy and this and
why is it always
and
the woke
I'm defending Bon Appetit magazine. I'm sure I would never get along with any of these pricks who work there. I have nothing to do with those people. I have nothing to do with it. But I'm just saying, I mean, the idea that you get popped out of college, out of an Ivy League school with this sense of entitlement and no rough skin, you're so thin-skinned, you're not going to make it anywhere. Unless, of course, you all just grab woke torches and have throw a little revolution on social media, which is what happens and what happened to her
happened
boss.
to the New York Times. The New York Times
But
is now run by
listen
wokies.
Listen
too.
to this, Alice. After this podcast came out from Reply All with this young lady whose name you know and I can't pronounce.
It feels wrong. Like I'm telling people that I, as a brown woman, have experienced a
after she and the guy PJ, who were at Gimlet, which is a successful media organization, put out this second podcast, they've now been canceled. The people inside of Gimlet, their little wokesters said, hey, a couple years ago, we wanted to unionize, and you guys weren't all in for it. You have to go. And now this woman with a vocal burn is
Wait,
now...
Trudy's gone too now?
Yes, is unemployed. So now they're whacked.
Wait, why? Because people wanted to unionize years ago? So...
Yes.
But this is why you can never try and buy into the woke stuff, because you always end up at the guillotine yourself.
Yes, and you've pledged to play by the rules. And the rules are, if other people feel hurt because of something you did or didn't do, then you have to be whacked too. And so now vocal burn is now gone and unemployed.
That's incredible.
Yes. This is incredible. This is the world we live in.
You can tell your woke stories to us on Twitter at Burn Barrel Pod. You can find us also at facebook.com/Burn Barrel Podcast. You can send us an email, burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com. You can talk to us on YouTube. You can watch video versions of our podcast there. We have a whole channel. It's Tom Shattuck's Burn Barrel over there on YouTube. You can like, you can leave comments, you can subscribe to things and write reviews.
2 more hogs got the fever.